Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to this session which will be looking at the Prague Convention. This is a document that was written by some Amateo board members over the course of a week at a conference in Prague, the Heartbeats Conference. And the Prague Convention is a document that tries to put together in a very succinct way what arguments you might want to use to advocate for amateur arts in your country. Briefly to say about Amateo, Amateo is the European Network for Participatory Arts Activity, and it is mainly a network of networks which has just under 50 members in different European countries at the moment. Okay, so with that introduction, I believe that you've all been sent a copy of the Prague Convention. If you're looking at this as a recording, then the actual document will be on the same page as the recording, so you can look back at it. But hopefully you have the actual document open, and I will now share my screen for a short presentation to take you through that document. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Okay, so we have called this document the Prague Convention 2024 because that's where it was written, and it's a document to help you advocate for participatory amateur arts activity. No. Sorry, just having a technical problem here. There we are. Okay. So the purpose of this document was to briefly summarize the crucial role, the benefits, and the impact of amateur arts activity. Obviously, one can write entire books about this, and certainly very long documents, but it is useful, we believe, to see this in a very concise manner, and then you can expand on any of those arguments in the context of your own country or your own arts activity. So the use of the document is to influence your relevant stakeholders. That could be funders, it could be partners, it could be policymakers, so for instance, politicians. And the last part of the document is that we make some practical suggestions of things that you might suggest or want to take forward. They're just suggestions and inspirations, and obviously it depends on the context of your activity and your country. So the content of the guidelines is basically the first section is definitions and introduction. Then the second part takes you through the ways in which amateur arts are important for society and individuals. And there's a lot of arguments. One of the values of writing this document is that we realized what a wealth of arguments there are to say why amateur arts are important. So that alone should be very helpful for everyone to see. And then, like I say, the third part is some practical recommendations for actions. And then finally, we have assembled some of the relevant research and data that we know of. But this is a document that can happily be expanded. So if you have further research or data that you could contribute to this, then we're very open to that. And we will share an email address at the end in the chat that you can contact. So, to look at the definitions and introduction. So firstly, we talk about what are amateur artists and what is amateur art activity. So here we are not talking about participation in terms of more people attending a performance of something. We're talking about active engagement by people, not passive. And then there's two main branches of amateur arts activity. One is a sort of continuous activity. This will be groups that meet every week, every month, every year. Some of them might be very old, or some of them might just be new, but their activity is ongoing. And then the second type of activity is project activity. So it will have a beginning and a middle and an end, and it will involve amateur artists, but it will be a time-limited activity. One of the things that we realized when we started writing this document is that the funding models for this kind of activity in different countries can be very different. And so we've tried to list some of the ways in which that happens. I think one thing that we agreed on for all countries is there isn't really enough recognition of this sort of activity, and therefore not enough funding or the right sort of funding for this kind of activity. We're hoping that this document will help you make that case more strongly. And one comparative area that we discussed was amateur sports. Now, in all countries in Europe, it seems that governments understand amateur sports much better than amateur arts. So they understand that, children and adults play football in their spare time. They don't all become professional footballers. They don't get that about amateur music or amateur drama or amateur art. And we also talk about some of the reasons for taking up amateur arts. So what motivates people to take it up? Now, when you're looking at young people, it's quite often something that is modeled or even imposed by their parents, potentially. But when you're looking at adults, what are the motivations that can get them to start on this activity? What can get them involved? Sometimes it's the activity itself, and sometimes they need an ulterior motive. So by that, I mean they need a reason to get started that may not be related to the activity. So the doctor tells me that singing is good for my lungs, so that's why I'm going to join a choir. But then once they are through the door, obviously other reasons may cause them to stay with that choir and to carry on singing. Or the other strong motivation is to preserve the intangible cultural heritage of your area. This came out quite strongly at the conference in Prague when we talked about this, because people obviously are very proud of their heritage, but unless it gets handed on to the next generation, it will not stay. So the contributing to the handing over of intangible cultural heritage is a strong motive. And another ulterior motive that's very strong is to do something good in your community, to either give something back or to raise funds. So in the United Kingdom, this happens a lot, that music groups, for instance, raise money for other charities by singing in a concert or playing at an event. So I've already, alluded to some of the reasons here for wanting to, why the amateur arts are important. So for the transmission of intangible cultural heritage, for sure. So if you don't know that expression, so cultural heritage, quite often we think of as buildings and paintings and art, but intangible cultural heritage is the activity that is intrinsic to your area, your culture, your country, and that you are keeping alive by handing over to the next generation. This could be singing, dancing, theatre, or specific art forms. So I don't know why I'm thinking of cheese rolling, but there's a championship for rolling cheeses down the hill or something in some parts of England. So that is intangible cultural heritage, as well as, say, Morris dancing or carol singing at Christmas. So I'm using examples from the United Kingdom because that's the country I know best, but I'm sure you will have lots from your own country. For young people, there are many, many reasons for getting involved in this. Many of them are similar to those for adults, but in particular, there are actually scientific reasons why taking part in this activity helps young people. It helps them in terms of their wider cognitive development. In particular, music has been researched to bring benefits in that respect, especially also for young people with neurodiversities, so ADHD and autism in particular. There's also that they develop the soft skills that are going to be important for them for the rest of their lives. They have to collaborate people, they have to negotiate with people in a space, whether that's, if they're doing youth drama productions or music concerts or creating a band of their own and writing their music. And they also develop social connections. I don't know what it's like in other European countries, but in the UK, research says that the biggest percentage of people who are suffering from loneliness is actually young people under the age of 25. So building social connections and the ability to connect with people over an activity is really important for young people. Obviously, as it is for adults as well, that it's quite a crucial period of life when they might struggle with that. And for adults, I've already been through some of those reasons, but for society as well, I think it's really important to recognize the wider benefits, and that can help us make the case to policymakers and other stakeholders that actually the arts are a very good way of bringing disparate communities together. So, for instance, you might want to look up, there's an organisation called Beyond Skin in Northern Ireland. You might be aware that Northern Ireland is still a very divided society between Protestants and Catholics. And this organisation brings communities together through music projects very successfully. So they are, amateur arts activity is a neutral space where you can bring people from different communities and get them to understand and learn about each other. So it's an important thing for that. It's also very important in terms of making an area a place where people want to live and work and businesses want to be at. So in the UK, there is now research that shows what businesses look at when they want to relocate to a different city or they want to expand is what is happening in that area to support their teams. Is it an interesting place? So will they attract the right staff for their business? And the activity that is on offer in that community is really important factor for that. There's also, of course, the actual tangible economic impact of amateur arts activity. Again, I don't know whether that's the same in other European countries, but in the United Kingdom, the impact of professional arts organisations has been measured quite well. but not that of amateur arts activity. But we know, obviously, that amateur arts groups, they hire spaces to do their activity, they hire professionals to lead the activity, they spend money on whatever materials are needed for that activity, and they contribute to a lively nighttime economy, as we call it in the United Kingdom, by hiring venues and bringing people into city centres for their events and activities. So to talk now about the sort of pick and choose menu, really we've sort of put this under 4 different headings. So firstly, to make the case for participatory arts, for intangible cultural heritage. So that's a very strong argument that will resonate with politicians. Improve access for young people to arts participation, because that is the single thing that will help them remain engaged with amateur arts in later life. Again, research shows that it's much harder for people to start that sort of activity if they've never done it as a child. So introducing young people to this activity is really important. And then the other thing that we're kind of aiming for is that all adults have opportunities for participatory arts. And that means all adults. So, that means geographical accessibility, it means financial accessibility, it means physical accessibility, for instance, for people with any physical impairments, and obviously cultural accessibility. Do you see activity or going on in your community that you can relate to? And finally, we're suggesting that the best thing to use is research and data. Certainly in the United Kingdom, politicians always like a good set of data. And they also like being offered solutions for problems. And really what this document is saying is giving everyone opportunity and access to amateur arts activity offers solutions for society. It offers society a way forward in terms of bringing communities together and having a society that is respectful of different cultures and types of individuals. So this is why, one of the other things, as we've said, is, you can use participatory arts as a communication tool to talk about different issues in society. And actually, I note that Jan Willem is in this meeting, and I might ask him to expand on that in a minute, because he runs quite a lot of projects in that. And the other thing to think is not to just think of stakeholders as the politicians maybe, or the funders, but also where can you build partnerships that are relevant to your activity. So again, in the United Kingdom, I'm just using as an example, that would be health providers or the National Health Service, because there is so much evidence for well-being and health benefits of this sort of activity. So think laterally, think outside the box where your partners and allies could be to make the case for this activity. The other thing that's important is to keep the amateurs inspired and moving forward. And so creating opportunities for joint activity between amateur arts and professionals has been found to really keep this activity alive for participants. And then the other thing that was agreed was really important and a case to make is that amateur arts umbrella networks are really important. So Making Music, that I represent, is the amateur music umbrella network in the United Kingdom. And I think there's lots of members of Amateo who are amateur arts umbrella networks in their countries. And these networks are the best way to develop the activity, to support the activity, which is generally or very often run by volunteers. So they need some help in keeping their activity going and moving it forward, developing it further, opening up to more people. But making the case for such umbrella networks is really important, therefore, but not that easy. And I have to tell you that there is more funding for that in Europe, in my experience, than there has been in the United Kingdom. Right, so the appendix, as I say, suggests research and data that you can use that's publicly available. And please do send any comments about this document or to suggest further research to comms@amateo.org. And maybe, Milka, you could also put that email address in the chat for me, please. Great. Okay. That's kind of a quick go through. But now I think myself and the colleagues who helped write this are very happy to answer any questions or pick up any discussion. Anybody want to ask anything or? So can I ask Gabriella? Is it Gabriella? Oh, she just disappeared. Oh, Antje, you've got a comment? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was very interesting. Yes, I'm from the BMCO in Germany, and I think we are very much alike, making music in BMCO. I think we are your German companion. I think and I wonder if you said evidence-based policy making is very much your theme, your subject in the amateur arts in Great Britain. Have there been any ambitions to measure the economic impact? You said it hasn't been measured so far, but maybe you can enlarge a little bit about why it hasn't been measured so far, and maybe if you have any suggestions what we can do if we want to follow up on the economic impact of amateur arts, amateur music. That would be very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, so I have two problems in the United Kingdom in terms of research. One is that I don't even know the actual number of this is, so I'm just talking about music groups because, that's the area that I represent. And so actually this is the bit of research that we're first trying to get someone to do, is to measure how many groups there are. And so the reason the amateur arts impact has not been measured is because nobody sees this activity, right? So it might be different in Germany, but in the UK, because it's not funded, it is not seen by policymakers. And so we feel that if we had better research on the numbers, so the only research we have is 15 years old, 16 years old, and it was England only, so it didn't include Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And so it definitely out of date. So we feel that if we could make people realize the scale of this activity and the number of people involved, then it will be easier then to get other research going. So we're too small to do research ourselves or to have funding. We're not funded except by membership subscriptions. So we are trying to kind of apply for funding with academic partners to get this work done. I think the BMCO probably has a better situation in terms of public funding for that. Emilia?
Yes, thank you, Barbara, for the presentation. And I wanted to thank everyone actually involved in the development of the document, because I think it's very, very important for the network, Amateo, and in itself, and all the, like the networks, what you said, that are in the network. So, and as my colleague said before, it goes very well together actually with our ideas on the impact of amateur music. But one point I was like kind of missing, because everyone is also asking me, but what is amateur arts or music? And when we thought about this the last year, because we had to write our like vision and mission statement of our own association, we had one point that I don't know if I overread it in your document, that amateur musicians or artists in my field, it's musicians, they are not meant to make a living out of their activities. I don't know if that is missing in the document, or if I just like really picking up one point I'm actually focusing on. Thank you.
I think you're right. That is generally the accepted thing. So we in the UK we call them hobby musicians to distinguish from professional musicians. Now, I don't know what it's like. Again, I can only speak for music. I don't know what it's like in Germany, but in the UK there's a bit of a grey area. Okay, so for instance, people who play percussion instruments, right, even as a hobby, are very popular, okay, because there aren't enough of them. So they usually get paid playing a concert, also because they usually have their own equipment that they bring, but they still have a day job. They have a different job, but they will get paid a small fee for turning up to play with this amateur orchestra tonight and this band tomorrow, and you know what I mean? And then there is the professionals that get involved. For instance, if a brass band does a competition, but they're missing a tuba player, they will probably pay for a professional tuba player to come and fill that gap. And they also engage quite a lot of soloists. Now, that is not the point of the groups. The point is that they are for hobby musicians. They're not for professionals, but they do engage with professionals. So it's sometimes difficult to unpick, right? So I suppose, but yeah, the participants are not earning a living. And we define that as more than 50% of their income is the agreement that we have with the musicians union. Okay. You're a professional musician if you earn more than 50% of your income from performing. Yeah, Connie?
Hi. Terrific presentation, Barbara, and an excellent question. When we were in Prague, we already discussed this issue relating to cultural diversity. And we notice in the Netherlands, as probably also in the UK and other European countries, that people coming from a culturally diverse background, meaning the former colonies, they have a different, I wouldn't say understanding, but a different structure of interpretation of amateur and professional arts. And you notice that during some years of their lives, they are professional musicians, quite often bringing the music of their home countries, and then they do something different, and then they go back to it. And it's impossible to say what they are exactly. But I do know that they enrich the music culture very, very much. And that it's actually fine that we don't label them too much.
Oh, thank you, Connie. I think that's a really good point. And we also did some research in the UK about 6 years ago where we were trying to understand some of that, Connie. You know, what are different musical genres? Do they have music groups, like we think of, amateur brass bands or orchestras or choirs. And it's quite different in different genres. So the Muslim religion, for instance, is quite divided on the value of music. As you know, in Afghanistan, it is now completely banned. And there are some, sects of Islam that totally forbid it. But if you think back to the Middle Ages, Islam was one of the, forerunners of, music and arts and everything. So it's not simple. And then there are other, so we found, for instance, in South Asian classical music, it is mainly about masters teaching people, but it is not acceptable for those people to sort of set up on their own, so to speak. Then there's other, so I think it's the Hindi religion, where mainly music takes place in the family or in a religious context, but not outside that. So it's like Connie, that's a really good point to make, that culturally amateur arts aren't easy to define, but yeah. Vera has just written a comment in the chat. Because you're not earning money. But I think that's, Vera, I don't know what country you're from, but that's bad. That, you should be earning money as a professional artist. What I'm talking about is about people who have a different job and they do the art, whether that's music or theatre or art, as a hobby. Whereas you are trying to get going on a career as a professional artist, which is different. And I'm sorry to hear that that is difficult for you. In Iceland, okay. So there are many countries that have support systems or not for professional artists trying to get going in their careers. But the amateur arts that we're talking about is the participants are not looking to become professionals. They are looking to do this activity as a hobby. But the people who lead them are generally professionals, certainly in the music sector. And I imagine, Connie and Jan Willem have experience of this a lot. I imagine it's in other fields as well, right? Any other questions or comments? Please do feel free to email us about this. Jan Willem, were you?
Yeah, maybe it's just to give some positive thoughts. But if you have a look, I was involved in the document and I'm in the board of Amateo, but I'm also working in Friesland in the Netherlands. And that is quite a special area. So amateur arts is really a big thing. It used to be a minor thing until they started capitalizing how much amateurs do we have. Now we have a province of 662,000 inhabitants. And then they were looking at, okay, how many of our inhabitants are involved in amateur arts? Now we have 200 amateur orchestras, 530 choirs, 250 amateur theater companies, etc., etc. So they found out that half of the inhabitants were involved in the amateur arts. And that really gave us the power to make the situation of those amateur associations much stronger. And now we have a whole system that they are supported so structurally. And so it helps to research how strong are we? How many are we? And what can we do? Because we also said, if, for instance, a town or a city is doing a climate project and they want to reach out to people, use the amateur arts, because at least 50% of your inhabitants are part of amateur arts. So we're doing here a lot of projects like healthcare and well-being projects with the amateur arts, climate projects with the amateur arts. So that also creates jobs, and that is also something for VENA. I'm also an artist myself, but I found out I can earn much more money in climate, biodiversity, etc., using the arts. So you need to think different, and I think if we all strengthen our forces and see how can we do research and find out what and capitalize what does the amateur arts in my area or my country mean, and use those figures to strengthen it. That was just some positive thoughts.
No, I mean that's amazing numbers. So in the United Kingdom, there's a government survey every year, which is now called, I think it's called Participation Survey, and it's a little bit difficult to understand the data, but we think that would show that between 10 and 15% of the population are involved. But your research is probably much more accurate because it's easier to research 660,000 people than it is to research 66 million. So that is part of our problem, but it's encouraging because it means we need to persist with trying to get this research done in the United Kingdom because it will really help us. And I guess that's the same, in other countries. And I know that BMCO has done some research, and other countries, LKCA is that in Netherlands?
Yeah, they're based in Utrecht. Yeah,
yeah.
And they also helped with the research to capitalize the amateur arts in our province.
Yeah. Connie.
Barbara, how would you feel that we have a little time left and I see some new faces attending your seminar, to just say hi and get to know each other a little? Would you?
Yeah.
I'm curious about Gabriella. I think she's from Lisbon. So we have.
I'm curious about all you guys.
and Iceland is also quite intriguing. So what's the situation in Portugal, Gabriella?
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Not from Lisbon, from Porto, a little north. And we develop projects with some vulnerable groups. They are not amateurs, really. They are people from community, and I'm a professional artist, and I work with them to make collective work. We cross nature, art, and community. It's Por um Galho. It's a project won Amateo in 23, I think. 2023.
Yeah. So
and I think we are not in the right same line. We are in the same umbrella, but I try to understand today with your speech, if because you work with amateurs, groups, people with some experience in art, right?
not only. No, so
Okay.
community, the work you describe sounds absolutely like what some of our members do, right?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of them might be doing music or something for a long time, but not everyone. And Jan Willem certainly always gets new people involved, right, in your project?
Yeah, yeah, also the visual arts and et cetera, et cetera. So that's very diverse. Yeah. And I know the culture is quite a big thing in Portugal. If I have a look at the professional arts, and I work a lot together with Portuguese companies like Teatro Bando, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know the amateur arts in Portugal that good. So haven't got a clue what their situation is. Are they supported? Do they have hard times?
I don't understand. I think the last you said
No, how the situation with the amateur arts is in Portugal. Do they have support? Are they seen? Are they?
we need to make the sorry, my English to looking for the funding like professional artists and in our project professional project we make the all and we put the other people not professional. I don't know if I was clear.
Yeah, but you're working mostly, I think, in the visual art, isn't it?
Visual, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Sculpture, and we make some with natural materials, and the Porongalho project with the seniors, old people. And now we make a project with old people, but in ceramic. Make a panel, and we are working together to make. And it's important to in participatory arts, all people contribute, make some of them in the project, right? They choose something, and I'm professional, but I need to not. I'm not in the top. I'm right in the same level. I can some things I need just me. No, I'm sorry, the English. Oh, okay,
No problem.
sometimes I need to make some decisions because they don't have to know how to make this choice. But I try always. They make all choice, and it's funny. At the end, they feel the work is them really.
Yeah.
It's from
That
them.
is, yeah, no, so
Very
that,
important.
yeah, no, very, very good. And that's you know, that those are the two models, you know, either artists like you who get people involved, or people who get together and then find an artist like you or a musician or whatever to lead them. So those are they're equally valid, but those are the two models that we see, I think, in all countries.
And I'm also very curious about Iceland, because with 380,000 inhabitants and such a huge island, it's a really funny space. And I only work together with Sigur Rós, the Nordic House, and some actors, but I don't know anything about the amateur arts on the island.
Hi, thanks for a really wonderful time with you. Yeah, it's really problematic because a lot of grants are directed to professional artists and professional theater groups that I cannot name my theater group as a professional, because although I am a professional, but I'm like my background is a visual arts, but lots of performing arts as well, dance. So it is really problematic to get any funding for what I do, for example. And mostly I do it with my own, I'm on my own time, and I volunteer. I managed to do already 2 theater productions, me and amateurs, who were all like asylum seekers here, and volunteering. Also, some people volunteering in the Red Cross as well, who has disabilities. So it's really interesting how it's important for them, and what great feedback I got. I cannot stop to do it. I don't have funding. I cannot stop to do it because I just can't, because they need it. They definitely need it, and it's very difficult to arrange any money for it. Although, like, I work as a volunteer in the Red Cross, I'm also an activist in the rights of nature and the rights of people with disabilities. I'm doing lots of stuff, but with the funding for these sorts of things, is like, I feel like it's a niche, and it's like not really so appreciated. So it's tricky thing. It's not about even arranging a place to perform, because as I managed to get a grant, which was that I could use a theater space for free, so I wouldn't have to pay for it. And that's also like, at least that, but that doesn't mean like I have any budget for like entire theater production, meaning I do everything with the people that are my actors, meaning like we all saw our clothes, our costumes. I'm helping them because I'm also sewing. I like multidisciplinary artists, so I know lots of techniques. So we sew together, we arrange everything together, scenography, we build together. So they are included in each part of the theater production. And also they have a huge influence on the script. We do all together. So it's like really participatory art, and which is amateurs. Obviously, when I saw the discussion title, I thought I have to take part in it. But I think it's really, it all depends on countries where you live and how people treat these things. But like, I really feel like this is another country where, in general, art is not really funded enough, basically. And I am trying to collaborate. I just registered an organization, and non-profit organizations. And through that, I hope I will be able to get more funding than as an individual artist. And plus, I cannot, I'm also dependent person, because like I'm having my own invisible disabilities. So it makes my situation a little bit more difficult. So I have no support for my disability or for my living, for my creating in here. Sometimes I get some money for some projects, and that I'm doing not as a participatory project, but mostly my own projects, like exhibitions or panel discussions, stuff like that. So yes, I'm really curious what the future will bring. And I was always curious what's this thin line between professional and amateur, and yeah, and sometimes not earning money and not being able to get enough funding for your art. I don't think it makes me not a professional artist, because I'm working for a very long time as a professional artist, which is, including my disability, it's really a struggle.
Yeah, no, so Vina, you are the professional, but the people you work with are the
Yes.
amateurs. And
Yes,
so
exactly.
your activity, well, it's not dissimilar to what Gabriela is doing in Porto, but with different art forms. But so I think you were saying that in Iceland, the funders or the government do not recognize the value of amateur arts activity. So I mean, there is no association for amateur arts in Iceland that you know of, therefore, like.
As far as I know, not really. But like, I won't lie to you, maybe there is, but I don't know of, I have contacts with other people, other professionals, artists, of course. And yeah, it's just, in this small country, yes, a small population, is a big island, but there's lots of artists here. And also a lot of artists coming from abroad. In Reykjavik, it's like kind of multicultural place where it's really vibrant. And but it's really problematic. Like, it's problematic for to get enough funding and budget for a professional theater production. Then you can imagine how difficult it is to get funding for an amateur theater production. You know what I mean? It's just difficult.
Yeah.
So I think it's really depending on the government and how they treat and how they portion a budget towards which direction, which here is a lot going to like save electrical power plant from a volcano and lava building a huge walls around it, funny enough, but that's Iceland.
So do you for this document to be useful for you, do you know, I don't know about Iceland and politics, how to influence your politicians, how to approach your politicians? Do you have a member of parliament that represents you, or you have a culture minister or someone that you can approach? So I don't know, in the United Kingdom, which is much bigger, you have local authorities and then you have national governments. And I would suggest that you use this document to approach them and maybe write to them and say, look, this is what's recognized as the value of amateur arts activity. I'm doing this activity which brings so much value. What are you going to do about it? Can I come and talk to you about what I do?
Yeah, actually, it's a very good idea. Thanks. It's not difficult to get to politicians here, to be honest. So I think I have some chances. Because honestly,
that is usually is usually easier in a small country.
Yes.
Than in a large one. Valentina.
I just wanted to include hear Vina talking about that she opened an NGO organization. Maybe that's another way you can approach politicians, because definitely there must be some funds or some regional authority funds or things like that for NGOs. It doesn't necessarily has to be a cultural one. It can be connected with the well-being and health and mental health and things like that, where you can present your activity, as the Barbara said, the mean to achieve something else. And maybe that is a way that you can use your professional, because you're a professional artist doing projects with the amateurs. Pretty much same as Gabriela, as I understood. Hello from Croatia. I'm so glad that I hear from different parts of Europe and the experiences. So if we can help with some backgrounds or experiences or ideas, please be free to write us or to ask, because there are possibilities. Just the one needs to be opened to recognize the situation. That's it. Thank you.
Connie?
Yes, Barbara. Before wrapping this up, I'm wondering about Sasha.
Yeah.
As you are, probably.
Yes, I am. Sasha, are you there? I mean, Sasha put a message saying that she was listening to, she's in something else, so she was listening.
She was in another meeting doing a parallel session.
Yeah. So Sasha may not be able to speak.
No.
But Sasha, if you can put us a message in the chat that we know where you're from and what you're doing.
What?
That would be.
We know Sasha.
Oh, do you know stuff? Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah,
Sasha.
but she used to be in I think in the board, but anyhow, she was my colleague in Amateo, so we all know her.
Arts Take Part project.
Yeah.
Okay. So what country is Sasha from?
Slovakia.
Yeah. She's Bratislava. She's living in Bratislava, having a hard time with politics there.
Yeah.
Something to do with the right wing, let's say it in that way. So it's not good for the arts. But next time when I'm in Iceland, I will give you a second one, visit you, because I'm also doing a project in Iceland with the Beekeepers Association. I never knew there were bees in Iceland, but there is a Beekeepers Association. Good to know.
Okay. I think this might be a good point to wrap things up. I hope we've cheered up Vina, apart from anything else. You know, there are other people out here with your same problems. So, hopefully you will get there.
Yeah, thank you. That was really, really lovely from you. I have lots of ideas. I will go ahead and everyone is welcome in Iceland. Like anyone want to come, like we can do something creative. I'm open. I love collaborate. I always collaborate. So yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody.